felt hopeless. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. These are the words that begin our story. There was a family in Babylon struggling to survive. Food was scarce and options were limited, a very arid environment. So we see this family, Naomi and her husband and her two sons. They're faced with difficult choices, a difficult situation, and in order to survive, they make the decision to leave Bethlehem and to move to Moab. Moab, at the time, was a very, very serious enemy of the Israelites. This is enemy territory, but of course, desperate times, desperate measures. So they move to Moab. And once they're there, they build a new life. The sons marry two Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. And everything is amazing for the family. Until it isn't. Everything is amazing for about 10 years. And then Naomi's husband dies. And then both of her sons die. And she's left with just her new daughters-in-law. Death has crept in, and it's consumed this family. Everything that was is gone. The life that they knew would never be the same. They were experiencing loss, tragedy. And all of us, to some level, know, in some ways, what that can feel like. But this was their entire life in a new world, in a new country. So Naomi's soul was crushed. She had lost most everything that she had ever held dear, except for her daughters-in-law, who she'd come to love. So she's faced with having to make some difficult decisions. So she decides that in order to survive, it's best for her to return home to Bethlehem. So she calls her two daughters together, and she explains to them that it would be very, very difficult, a very hard life for them to go to Bethlehem and to be widowed foreigners in this land. And so she basically commends them to return to what their former life was before they were married in Moab, and just to be relegated to that. And so they weep together, they console each other. This is a family about to be torn even more apart. So Orpah, she reluctantly agrees. She kisses Naomi. She goes back. Ruth, on the other hand, is adamant she is not leaving Naomi's side. Ruth says, "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." Naomi is family to Ruth now. Ruth is sticking with her through thick and thin. So they decide to pack up and head to Bethlehem. Weary and in search of a future that has seemingly escaped them. So they make it to Bethlehem. And they're trying to survive. So one of the first things we need to figure out is, how are we going to eat? How are we going to find some food? Previously, when Naomi had been there, there was a famine. Things were very hard. But fortunes have changed in Bethlehem. There's a barley harvest that's blossoming right there. So they devise a plan, and Ruth goes out looking for a field to pick grain from. So she finds a field, and she begins picking, and she actually ends up meeting the field's owner, a man named Boaz, who ends up being very generous to her, learns her story, and learns that he is actually a relative of Naomi's, and he is just moved and amazed by Ruth's story of how she stuck with Naomi through the struggle they were going with, through their tragedy and their loss. And so he's very generous to her, to the point where she describes him as a man of noble character. He prays for her. He says that she can pick whatever she wants from the field, and he instructs his workers to help her and not harm her, to allow her to take what she wants. And so she does this, and she's just amazed at this man's generosity. And so she returns back to Naomi. She explains everything that went on to Naomi, and Naomi is overjoyed. Naomi, it's as if a river of life has flooded into dry streams in her soul. She has hope again, because she realizes Boaz, that's a relative of ours. It's not just the fact that they had food. She realized that Boaz, this is a relative of ours. She explains to Ruth that he could potentially be their family redeemer, which was an Israelite custom at the time, that a relative would have the opportunity to marry another family member's widow in order to protect their land and to redeem the family, to protect the family's line. So she explains that this could be it. Could be how we could save our family's future. And so they're overjoyed. They're ecstatic. From there, they devise another plan. Naomi wants Ruth to put on her finest clothes and to go and make it known to Boaz that she is available. And that she needs to be very clear to him that she wants him to be their family redeemer. So she does this. She goes back at night to visit Boaz. He's in his field taking a nap, and she wakes him up, and he's startled. But she's very kind to him, very gracious. And she explains, she cuts right to the chase, that she wants him to be their family redeemer and to redeem the family and to be faithful to him like she has been faithful to Naomi. And he, again, Boaz is very moved by this, by her kindness, by her, again, faithfulness to Naomi. And he describes her as a woman of noble character, like how she had described him. And he agrees to this. He says this should be done. And then he gets to thinking about it, and he realizes that there is another relative who's actually closer in relation to Naomi and is therefore more in line to be the family redeemer. But he's adamant about this. This is something that ought to be done. So he says to Ruth, hey, tomorrow we're going to go into the town, and we're going to meet with this relative and the town elders, and we're going to figure it out. This is something that needs to be done. I'm going to go with you to this and help you. So he gives Ruth more barley to take back to Naomi and to tell her the news. So she goes back, and Naomi, again, just seems like a totally new person, just filled with joy and hope, and is so excited about the possibility of this. So we jump to the next day, and they go to town. They meet with the relative and the town elders, and this closer relative that Boaz, explains the situation to is, according to the story, he's all for it. He's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do this. And then he finds out that Ruth is an immigrant, that she's a foreigner. And he goes, hold on a second. He's concerned about the risk. He doesn't know if he can trust this Moabite. He would be potentially risking his family's estate if he was to take on this marriage and the land. And again, he doesn't know if he can trust her, so he backs out. But he offers it to Boaz, the next in line for this opportunity. Boaz knows he can trust Ruth. He knows her character. He's seen her faithfulness to Naomi through their struggle. He trusts her, and he's going to be faithful to her. And so he explains to the town elders and to everyone there that he is going to take Ruth to be his wife, and he's going to acquire the land, and he's going to be their family redeemer. And from there, they go on to, they give birth to a son, and we read that Naomi's joy is completely returned to her as a new grandmother. And it's just this beautiful family story. So we see in this story, this narrative, that from the ashes of death comes life, comes new life. This is a story of God giving redemption, of God showing providence in the lives of an old widow and of an immigrant widow and of a humble farmer. This is a story about faithfulness, and this is a story about restoration. And what's so interesting about this story is that we see from the lineage from Boaz and Ruth's son Obed, he ended up becoming the grandfather of David, from whose line we obviously have Jesus. And so it's so interesting to see this, what seems just like a very simple story of tragedy and then family restoration. We see that actually in the fabric of the gospel, of the Bible narrative, is this story of redemption. In Jesus' literal DNA is this story, this family background of God redeeming what a lot of people would have considered the least of these: an old widow, an immigrant widow, and a farmer. We see in the gospel that no one is forsaken. No one is too insignificant. No one is forgotten. God offers restoration to even the least of these. It is in the very fabric of the gospel that there is hope, that it is here, that redemption is available to everyone. No one is forsaken.